Um, yeah. So, I was never like super. I would never consider myself a leftist or a Republican or anything like that. Until only recently. You know, back in 2014, 2015, as like the presidential race was happening, and it was becoming obvious who was going to become president. You know, Trump. I didn't really take him seriously. I didn't think he was a threat. My wife, she seemed to have this instinct that some shit was going on. And I guess it's a testament to how fucking blind I was and how, like, I must have been subconsciously, like, really bad because you had to, I had to have avoided his, like, making fun of this mentally challenged dude with Tourette's or something on stage and being like and making sexist statements and stuff like that, and like you know his rhetoric was subtle a little bit, like when he would say like there are some rapists coming in, because it's not like he said all, but when he says stuff like that, when he points it out, like we know there's like a subgroup of uh horrible people in any group of so there's always going to be bad people in a group, and to have to point out, you know, as if it's just like it needs to be said. It's rhetoric that leads people to believe in and make up stories in their head about what's actually happening. Like again, like he's not gonna say rapists are gonna come for you and take your guns or whatever, but by implanting a thing into a biased person's mind that's already willing to like go downhill with that, yeah, of course. But yeah, my wife believed it before I did. I thought him being called a Nazi was silly. I probably should have realized what was happening. You know, it really is like the people with the brown shirts took them off and then put on um, red shirts and red caps and flew their red flags. You know, my wife knew before me. Even saw like a band that I listened to, like called me out actually, ironically, and I like the song, but it was said like nobody would take him seriously, but now he's here, basically almost a Nazi. Like I didn't take him seriously. I didn't. You know, I didn't vote for him. It wasn't my responsibility, but I guess it kind of is, right? Um, this whole America First thing coming out of the woodwork mostly because of Trump. It's insane. I'm not saying it created I'm not saying it was created by Trump, because America First has always been a thing. In fact, I plan on doing more research about America First in America and like the Nazi connection, which is terrifying. Recently I've been on this kick where like I would read about American eugenics connecting itself to Hitler and him reading up on Nazi eugenics and writing and praising America a little bit in the Mein Kampf. He thought we were disgusting for protecting Jews, but he admired what we did to the African Americans and what we did to the native populations. Um, he did praise us for that, and most scholars don't want to point it out. You know, guilt goes a long fucking way. You put your head down, and the fucking train holding all the Jews goes right past you. And the Nazis, they they really have put the guilt trick in people's minds. Or America is just anti-Semitic, uh, anti-Semitic in some way. Because in the Weimar Republic, there were some Jews that had access to banks. It's not really that big of a deal. But when people say this, they get defensive because when people say, yeah, Jews, banks, blah, 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 it usually means genocide. That's why Nazis did it. And so they can't think for themselves. They can't morally roll over in their head, you know? Why? Just because some people had first dibs on a certain thing in society that they deserve to be genocided? Why? You're insane. And so the Jewish question is a trick question, okay? You cannot fall for it. You cannot fall for the guilt, okay? By being like, no, Jews didn't have access to banks. That's not true at all. You are implying through your denial that if they did have access, then the Nazis had a point. By you denying it, you're implying that what the Nazis would have done is justified. Or you think the person making the point thinks that the Nazis were justified. But I do think by denying a thing in favor of something not being justified, but it's like, no, he didn't jaywalk. He didn't deserve to get shot. Why would jaywalking even so stupid to make this comparison, but it's so ridiculous. Like, bank owning justifying genocide, like, that's insane to me. And this is why everybody falls for this Nazi bullshit. This is one of the strongest things that I think they have to say, is the trickery of the Jewish question, because you are justifying genocide by denying and saying no, they didn't have access to banks. You should explain yourself more when you explain why they do, okay? Because there is anti-Semitism, and it's very like subtle. People just leave things on a cliffhanger for you to assume, right? That's happened to me with different things, like the WikiLeaks thing. But you you have to explain why it's not justified while saying they did have access to some banks. You cannot just you can It's just so insane how much guilt just leaves trains to pass your mind. You know, you don't solve anything by holding your head down. You need I'm not saying punch a Nazi, but it's more justified than just closing your ears and saying no, 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 it didn't happen. They're not justified in this genocide because they didn't own. And you know what? Essentialism gets stuck in this argument because and only smart people can really like handle this type of shit. But just because a couple people had access to stuff doesn't mean the whole ethnic group was in on it. And I think that's a fear that people have when you're making the rhetoric about the Weimar Republic. They are scared that you might be justifying genocide, but at the same time, it's full circle. But you know, there is always going to be like guilt that justifies genocide at the end of the day when you say the Weimar Republic and deny that shit. When you deny the Weimar Republic nonsense. It's not even worth it's not worth the guilt. You gotta fight these people. You can't fight you can't just stay silent in the face of intolerance. You gotta fight these Nazi pieces of shit. You know, we have to.